Anyone who looks at history knows that free societies never last. There are simple reasons for that. Freedom becomes permissiveness and license. Or freedom loves safety and builds such security it loses freedom, one nation under surveillance. Or people who love freedom prize it so much they'll do anything to fight for freedom, including things that contradict freedom. Think of Abu Ghraib. In other words, freedom is quickly lost. So if you see what the framers were trying to do, they wanted to win freedom, that's the revolution. They wanted to order freedom, that's the Constitution. But they also wanted, and Americans today forget this, to sustain freedom. And that's the hard one, because it's not just a few years, but decades and centuries, and it's our challenge today. No one has ever done it. Many Americans don't even know the system the framers had to try to do it. Now, they didn't give it a name. Tocqueville, a great French commentator, he calls it the habits of the heart. You've got laws, but you have the habits of the heart. School children, parents in families passing it on until it becomes second nature, the habit of the heart. My word for it is the golden triangle of freedom. And you can see the framers were very different people, and they had very different ideas on lots of things. But they all agreed on this. And you can put the triangle very simply. Freedom requires virtue. Virtue requires faith of some sort. And faith of any sort requires freedom. And like the recycling triangle, it goes round and round ad infinitum. Freedom requires virtue, which requires faith, which requires freedom, which requires virtue, and so on and so on. Now, they expanded on it. For example, virtue today is a goody-goody word, so rather prim, easily dismissed. But of course, the root of virtue is courage. So it starts in courage, but it includes honesty, loyalty, patriotism, and of course, all these things summed up in character. Now you can see how far we've got from the framers. So the framers, John Adams says, the right of a people to know the character of their leaders, and he uses words like inalienable, indefeasible, he piles it up. Now when President Clinton was impeached, a number of scholars wrote to the New York Times, and they said, today character is irrelevant. What matters for a president is not character, it's competence. The framers would have disagreed, because between followers and a leader, character's the bridge. If you know your leader has character, you may not always know why he or she is doing what they're doing. It's beyond us. But you can trust their character. Equally, when leaders have such power that nothing appears to stand in their way, character is the inner bearing which gives them moral compass that stops them doing things that are wrong when they could get away with. Think of, say, President Nixon. So freedom requires virtue, and you could go on around the triangle, but you quickly see that what the framers set up, modern Americans have either ignored and neglected or openly dismissed because of the framers' views, say, on slavery, on women, on Native Americans. They were on those things wrong. They were real blind spots. But on how they understood sustaining freedom, their solution, I would argue, is probably the best the world's ever seen, and Americans who dismiss it so casually don't put anything in its place, and that's disastrous.